Okay, so we are back and we are ready to take the images and assets that we have exported out of Photoshop and Illustrator using the Save for Web dialog box, and we are going to bring those into our website now. When we save them out of those programs, we move them from the source folder and then into the root folder. And so now they are here in the root folder and we can see them in the files panel. Inside of the assets, we have the graphics folder in our graphic, we have the images folder in our 3 images. Now what we're going to do is start to add them into our site using CSS for a background image and HTML for a foreground image. I'm currently selected on the header in my CSS designer, and obviously there's a lot of CSS that's already been added to this page before you got it. So we're going to add to the rule that's already established for the header. We're going to go into the background category over here, and you can see that I currently have a background color so that we can see how big the header is. But what we also want to add in here is going to be a background graphic. So we're going to browse out and grab the header banner, which is inside of my graphics folder. So if you were able to kind of see this back a little bit further, we have stock to site master, root, and then inside of the root, we have the assets and then the graphics and then the header banner in here. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. So I've navigated in, I've gotten that file, you can see it showing up right here. So we're seeing it come in. One of the things that you may or may not have noticed is that it's actually coming in on top of or in front of the background color. So that tells you that we can actually change the background color in here and change the appearance of our web page by dealing with the relationship between the foreground asset and then the background color using CSS. So I can take that and I can change that to any of the other colors that I might be working with in my palette so that I can test different variations on my color theme. We are going to set a couple of other properties down here. One of them is for background position and the other one is going to be for background repeat. So under background position, if you can come over to where it says percentage, we're going to go all the way up and put in left. And for the second one, it's going to be top. And what that essentially does is make sure that the upper left-hand corner of the image is at the upper left-hand corner of that element, which in this case is header. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the background repeat to no repeat. You may or may not know this, but background graphics repeat forever. So if we don't tell it to not repeat, if for some reason we ever got extra visible space in that header, you might actually see a second iteration of that background graphic showing up in a tiling way. And for this application, we don't want that. So I'm going to leave that the way that it is right now. But one of the things I'm noticing is that the text content feels very crammed up there in the header. So I'm going to go into the layout category right now and I'm going to scroll down to the padding settings and I'm going to click and drag over that 0 until I can start to add in some of this extra protected space padding on the inside of the header. So as I start to open this up, somewhere around 80 to 90 pixels, I'm really liking how much space I have now given so that the graphical asset can sit up at the top and then the text that's really large has its own room down below. I'm also noticing that the text at the bottom feels a little bit tight, so I'm just going to come in here and add in a teeny bit of padding to the bottom, and that helps everything get a little bit of extra breathing space in here. So there we go. We've added our asset into the background using CSS, and now we are ready to add the assets in to the content. So here in the actual HTML. When we see this inside of our split view, or let me go right into code view, I'm going to get through the head, content in the head, and then down here what you can see is that the image source is that placeholdit.com. So this is actually linking out to the online resource and pulling that image in for me. And I'm ready to update that now, so that's why over here in live view, when I select the image, I can see it's active in the tag selector, and I'm going to find the source field here in Dreamweaver. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to set this to be the green fence image, and there it comes. And you can see that my source has been updated here, And also in the code, the image source has been updated. So it's in the assets, in the images, name of the file. Exactly what we want. Then what I'm going to do is move through and do that for the other two. For this one, I'm going to put the ceramic tile in. And for this one right here, I'm going to go ahead and put in the red wall. And you can see how easy that translation from placeholder image to your own asset is with the proper planning. So I've got all three of them in, feeling really good about that. We have a couple more things that we need to do to this. We are going to add in some alt text. We haven't covered that in a full lesson, but you will get that when you come back from spring break. I'll have that content ready for you to review because it is a part of your first website. But we're going to go ahead and add some initial alt text in here. Excuse me, using the properties panel down at the bottom. So I just shrunk my sidebar panels because I didn't have enough room on my laptop to be able to see these other fields down here in the properties panel. I needed to make a little bit more room. So with my image selected, my image element selected here, I can see that I have an alt field. And this is where I'm going to be adding in alternative text, which is an accessibility feature. And it's going to explain either the content of the image. So if there was a word in the image and it said buy now, then my alternative text would say buy now. If it was an image and it said Hamilton live, then my alt text would say Hamilton live. So it's really supposed to be sort of a direct translation. You're not supposed to add extra information. So for instance, with the image that we're looking at right now, I'm not going to say in here, oh, this is the fence that, you know, my kids and I just painted over spring break, and I love the color teal because it reminds me of the ocean. No, like that's way too much information. That's not what you as a sighted viewer see. You see something that just looks like turquoise panels or a turquoise fence or turquoise painted boards. So that's essentially what we're going to be putting in here. However, if your image is decorative, like I would say these are actually more decorative than content delivery. So it's not a demonstration, it's not a graph, it's not text, it's not instructional in any way. So it really is kind of there mostly for aesthetic appeal. So I could just leave the alt text empty for this, but since we're talking about it right now, I thought I'd introduce it here. So another thing to be thinking about is that the images actually perform a function in this context because when I select over the top of them, we've added that link. And so when an image is performing a function, then your alternative text can tell people what that function is. So what I'm going to type in here for this one, I'm going to say click, let's see, what did I call it? I said this, visit the article on identifying the output dimensions. So I'm just essentially saying if you click on this, then the purpose of this image is for you to click on it, and if you click on it, you are going to be doing this function right here. So that works for me. That's a good alt text, which you will learn about. So for this one, I'm going to use a similar process. I'm going to say visit the article on resourcing and processing the asset. Good. And then the last one, I'm going to say visit the article on adding the asset to your site via HTML or CSS. Okay, so I've got my alt text in here. We can see that in the code. Here is the alt for that asset, and it is written for human readers. It is indexed by the browsers. It does help with your SEO to have good descriptions of your assets, and also sometimes that helps those assets turn up when people do a Google image search or just an image search. So those are also helpful for you in terms of SEO. So we've got the alt text in here for our assets. We have one more thing that we need to do in here, which is that we need to cite our sources. So because we can use stock resources in your website, we also need to cite where our resources came from. And this is whether you made the resource yourself or if you found the resource from some other location that was approved. So we're going to go in here and add this citing. And we're going to do this both in CSS for the background and also in the HTML for the foreground. So I'm going to click to go into the code for this document, and I'm going to come up here into the CSS where I have my rule for the header. And in here I can actually find that I have my property where I load the background asset in, and I'm going to go ahead and I am going to cite this. So on the handout it tells you what you're going to be doing, so I'm going to do a / and the asterisk. And what I'm going to say in here is this asset was sourced from Professor Risch and was provided for reuse in this tutorial. And then I'm going to asterisk / and that ends my CSS comment. Now you have two basic options for yours. One comment would say this resource is 100% my own, and then the other comment would be a link to the location where you got that stock asset from. And besides that, there really aren't any other options for you because you can only use an asset that you own or a free stock asset. And that one would come with a link, and you would have ensured that that was a legal resource for you. So go watch or go look at the posting on stock and citing. So we commented in our CSS. Let's go ahead and scroll down until we get into our HTML. And then this is where we have our other digital assets are here. And really anywhere nearby, we could do it inside of the element, but I'm actually just going to go to the end of the element, and I'm going to add in an HTML comment. So remember that you can use your comment tags over here. So I could just say I want to apply an HTML comment. And what I would be putting in here would be our source or citing text, which in this case says, this image was sourced from, and then I'm going to put in the actual URL. So to put the URL in there though, I need to have logged that web address for this asset at some point, otherwise I wouldn't have a link to get. So fortunately for us, we were really organized when we were doing this, right? And so we actually have that text document where we were logging all of our stock images. So let's see if I can find that in here now. Okay, so here is that resource again that we looked at earlier in the tutorial, and this is why this is going to come in handy for us right now. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up so that I can use it. And what I'm doing right now is I am adding in my citing for the turquoise wood panel. So good thing I already logged that URL here, because now when I come back into Dreamweaver and I go into my comment, this is where I can add in the link to my resource. So I'm going to continue to do that right now since I already have that document open. I'm going to apply an HTML comment. I'm going to come out here to get the image link from my resource, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste that in there. I did have this sort of starter text in here, which I'll copy from here and bring back down and add just to make it full. And then to get myself started off for my last image, I will go ahead and create my comment. I'm going to add in that starter text that I already have copied right now, and then I'm going to head back out to Microsoft Word, and I am going to grab the link for the last asset. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and paste that here into my code, and I have my citing complete for my foreground images. I have my citing complete for my background asset up in the CSS. I have everything that I really need to have done for this process right now, and at this point I can go ahead and take a screen capture of the page. So right now I can take this out and look at this on a browser. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to be able to see my site here with all of my assets. I can see that the hand is showing up. So that's very useful for me. Now, my job at this point to turn this in would be to get a screen capture of this view to turn in. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do Shift Command 4 on a Mac to take a screen capture, and I just want to make sure that I have the image areas in here in my code, or I'm sorry, in my screen capture, because that's what you are responsible for producing. And then I'm also going to come in here and I can take my screen capture of my HTML and my CSS. So I'm going to do that through Dreamweaver because I like the way that they deal with the color as opposed to what happens when we look at it in Google Chrome. So I'm going to go back into Dreamweaver. I'm going to go into Code View. And then up here at the top, we really only processed or did anything with the header. So I'm going to take my screen capture of just the code that was put into the header right here. And then I'm going to let go of that. That's the image that I need in there. And then I'm going to move down and get into the 3 image assets in here that are in that ordered list. So again, Shift Command 4 on a Mac, or you are using the snip tool or print screen and doing a little bit of editing, depending on what your technology situation is. So now I am able to take an image capture of the code where I updated it with my citing, and I can see all the processed assets in there. And I have now completed the tutorial. The very last thing that I need to do is go into the assignment posting on Canvas and upload those 3 screen captures that I just made. And then I will be done. So I hope that that was helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. Reach out to me and have a good afternoon.